webcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar on the Changing Landscape of B2B presented by Zoey. This is Josh, part of Zoey's partnerships team, and I'm really excited to have you with us. We've got a lot of great information, so we're not going to take any time up front. We're just going to get rolling. First off, by introducing our presenters, I'll start by letting our founder and president, Yuri, introduce himself.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everyone. Thanks, Josh. Just want to give you a very quick background on myself. 2 decades of experience building internet applications, and specifically the last decade really focusing on e-commerce. Latest focus is, of course, Zoey, and we've evolved it to be a B2B platform over the past year. We've added over 150 different B2B customers, and that's led us to invest heavily in the B2B e-commerce space. We're excited to share with you today the information we've not only gained from the industry, but also from our B2B customers.
Thanks, Yuri, and I'll introduce myself officially as well. As VP of Partnerships at Zoey, I work with our merchants and our technology partners on a day-to-day basis to figure out how to bring all the different systems that our customers need to work together, and also how we can make sure that Zoey offers the best set of connections available to our customers and our partners to bring data in and out of the system. Before that, I was a developer, developing e-commerce websites and also overseeing the development of e-commerce websites, over 150 in total. So I've definitely been working in this space a long time as well, nearly a decade like Yuri. And we're both really excited to share some of the things we've learned in the B2B space, as well as share some insights that may help you as a business as you're working on your own stores. Before we actually get into the presentation, one thing we just wanted to share with you is how you can participate in this presentation. There's going to be a Q&A at the end of it, so feel free to submit questions during the presentation. There is a question section inside the software, so you can submit your questions to us. We'll see them on our screen. And then during the end of the presentation, we'll take some time to go through your questions. So feel free to submit them during the presentation, and we'll address as many as we can with the time we have left at the end. And our agenda, we're going to start off by reviewing some current B2B e-commerce data, show you some of the statistics and trends that have been surveyed and discovered by B2B buyers and merchants alike. We'll then talk about the trends that are coming out of that data, things that we're seeing happening in the B2B e-commerce space. We'll shift then to a customer success story that talks about how those trends are leveraged. We have Brad from Colorado standby on the line. He'll be joining us in a little bit to talk with Yuri about that. And then finally, we'll talk through some techniques and tools that you can use on your own site based on the trends in the story that we present with you today. With that, I'm going to pass it over to Yuri, and he's going to start by presenting some e-commerce data that could be valuable to you as you're thinking about what your next steps may be.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Josh. So I think the first thing that I just want to point out is that any way that you slice the data that we're looking at today, the bottom line is that more merchants are doing more of their shopping online, whether it be the actual research itself or the actual purchase itself, or both. The data that we're looking at here is from Forrester Research, and we sort of segmented it into 4 different buckets, and we'll build up on it over the next few slides. But first off, in the next 3 years, we're going to continue to see a significant increase in the numbers of B2B buyers who shop online. 38% of the buyers making at least half their B2B purchases online today. And if we look at 2020, which I know might sound far away, right around the corner, that number is going to jump to 55. That means that essentially 1 in 5 B2B buyers will be added to the roster of eligible purchasers within the next 3 years. So whether or not you're looking at the numbers one way or another, I think the bottom line is that the shift to online ordering is happening very quickly. And of course, we've seen that completely within the B2C space. On top of that, 38% of buyers, you've got an additional 25% today that aren't buying online and are doing their homework online first at least half the time. And the web is quickly becoming the main source of information, discovery, and eventually purchase for these types of buyers. And 76% of buyers who are looking to buy today essentially bucket the most important part of the experience being easy to find what it is that you're looking for. And so what percentage of your B2B customers do you expect to be buying from you online in 3 years? One of the most interesting takeaways for me is that if you flip the perspective to the business owners versus the merchants, you get that 49%, essentially the the top two percentiles, 25 and 24 added together, almost, half the customers will be buying from them online in 3 years. But surprisingly, this is a bit lower than the customer surveys. Remember, we just moments ago saw that 55% of merchants expect to be buying online within the next 3 years. So while 6% is not a huge spread, if you factor that out for the billion-dollar or multi-billion-dollar industry that B2B e-commerce is, those are some pretty significant numbers. And so if we shift focus here for a minute and actually dive down a little bit deeper, here's another survey, this one from eCommerce and B2B, which is even more bullish. 89% of B2B buyers use the internet to research their first purchase according to this particular survey, which is even higher than the one that we just saw previously from Forrester. So now let's take a look at how they're actually using the internet to find the data that they need and actually purchase the items that they want. No surprise, 75% of the research out there is done using Google. Search engine visibility is extremely important. 70% of e-commerce buyers are going to need multiple stakeholder approvals, meaning that the time to buy might be delayed, but more importantly, the amount of information that has to be shared internally is way higher. So access to information, therefore, becomes very important. And finally, 75% of B2B buyers are influenced by social factors. Now, we're not talking about social factors like Facebook and other types of social media, but really more towards reviews, and we find particularly towards the Q&A. Customers love to see some questions and answers around the products that they're shopping for. And so let's close this section now with some buying trends. We saw the perspective from the buyer, we saw the perspective from the seller, and we also saw some of the information research. But let's talk about the trends themselves. The biggest one, 7.5% annual B2B e-commerce growth. This is the fastest segment of e-commerce that's growing. If you look at B2C, it's way lower. Obviously way more saturated, but this trend is easily going to continue to grow. An average of 57% of the B2B buying process is completed before an interaction with a salesperson. This figure, some self-serves while others are handheld, but this indicates a huge push towards customers being empowered to complete many parts of the transaction and research on their own. 60% of buyers are seeking enhanced search capabilities that make it easier to find what they're looking for. Remember in the beginning, the number one thing that we saw that buyers care about is ease of finding the information. So tailored search results are going to be an incredibly important part of the website and buying experience. That means tailored pricing, tailored catalog results, and things around that. And finally, a newer direction I think is going to catch up. It's a little bit more pervasive in B2C is personalization. Half of B2B buyers surveyed say that personalization can improve a buyer's opinion of the company they're working with and find it important. Having said that, of course, I think that's a longer term trend that's going to appear, but it's interesting that it's influenced by the B2C that's out there. And so the big takeaway from this data is that customers talk. One of the things that B2B sites have for them is a lot of access restrictions, a lot of firewalls, a lot of proprietary information that's behind a paid gateway. But regardless, you cannot stop people from talking to one another. You cannot stop people from finding out the information that they are looking for. And more importantly, you need to be making it easy for people to be able to find you and to share the information that you're showing. Closed B2B sites are at a disadvantage. When the information is tough to find, when customers can't find it easily, and when you have to sort of log in to see anything at all, right? That doesn't mean that access restrictions shouldn't be around. It's just when there's absolutely nothing but a paywall. Certainly that works for some businesses, but as we're seeing the trends, more and more open information is where all of this is going.
Great. Thank you, Yuri, for all of that. And I think this makes for a good time to transition now from the data to talking about some of the trends in B2B e-commerce. So now that we have a bit of an understanding of what's going on and what customers and merchants alike are thinking about, let's take a look at some of the trends. And what we've seen in our research is that there's two major categories where the trends are falling into, and we'll dive into each of these in turn in a moment. But let's first talk about the two major trends. So first is the standardization of consumerization. So what do we mean by that? B2B buyers by day are your B2C buyers for themselves and their families when they get home from work. So your B2B buyers are using Amazon, they're using eBay, all of these websites that we all use, and are expecting increasingly the capabilities that they see on this website to permeate through their other shopping experiences. It's hard not to let your personal experiences affect what you're doing in other parts of your day. So if you're used to having easy access to information, if you're used to having updates on when your items have shipped and knowing exactly what's going on, you start to expect some of these pieces even in other types of business. So this is where B2B businesses in many cases have a bit of catching up to do because don't always provide all of these experiences. So, customers have become a bit spoiled, which is fine. What it just means is that you need to refocus your approach in certain cases to make, for instance, more information accessible online. Perhaps your product descriptions, your marketing materials, downloadable PDFs of your information. As Yuri said, reviews and Q&A, so more information is available. Amazon's really good about Q&A, where you can go to a section of the product and someone can ask a question and either the business or a customer can provide an answer, which allows for some interactivity and encourages people to navigate your site more. The second section is then things that B2B buyers specifically expect. So obviously B2C can't be everything. So there's things directly that B2B buyers need for their own purposes. So we know that the decision-making process is deliberate. There's multiple stakeholders many times in those types of purchases. They're larger purchases. They take more time to get approved. And therefore, with all that homework done, a lot of it's being done online. People are, of course, again, used to using Google for finding information, search engines, review sites, things like that. So again, having more information out there is very helpful. Once a decision is made, though, we need to make sure that the transactions are quick and easy. So once a customer knows what they're going to buy, the buying experience needs to be as painless and frictionless as possible. And so therefore, certain features built into the site, both in terms of helping the decision-making process as well as the transaction completion process, can give B2B companies a leg up in the process. So we're going to talk about a little bit of that. And so let's dive in first into the standardization of consumerization and the trends that are there. So the first three bullets that we want to cover is around that topic, starting with moving from EDI to the internet. Secondly, an expectation of standard B2C features. And third, the growing importance of mobile. And not necessarily what you think. This isn't necessarily customers using their cell phone to buy a giant purchase. But let's dive into each of these one by one now. Starting with EDI to the internet. So EDI is clearly an established system for being able to handle orders. A lot of businesses are using this today. It's definitely a large portion of the B2B volume. If you look at B2B business estimates, you do see EDI as a dominant player because of the historical implementation of it. But online transactions are growing faster than EDI in terms of the B2B growth. So you're starting to see this shift now. From one system to the other. But that said, not everybody needs to move away from EDI for transactions. They still want to have a website that they can access the research. So this is where your e-commerce site can be more than just a cart. It can provide catalog information, especially in a time where printing catalogs is very cost inefficient and expensive. You can simplify their ability to get key information, which is really important because if you want to be able to provide accessible pages, spec sheets, marketing materials, and so forth for internal stakeholders to be able to review, having it on a page that can be forwarded or a PDF that can be downloaded from the website is certainly going to help in terms of putting you in front of the people that need to approve the decision. And then you can also look at things like quotes for people who are new to your business and want to understand how much it's going to cost. This can be helpful if you're acquiring new customers, if you're a wholesale business trying to acquire customers from your competitors. Having a quote system that's outside a lockdown, if you are locked down, may also help in terms of getting them to the door and finding out that they're interested in you and perhaps being able to recruit them in. Second, the expectation of standard B2C features. So again, having that accessible and browsable catalog online. For certain types of businesses, that also means self-serve transactions where a customer who knows what they want to buy can go in and buy it. And then there's also the My Account section, which sometimes gets forgotten about, but again, is key for B2C sites when you go to see your previous orders, track order progress, or even being able to reorder or recur orders for especially consumable goods where you need to be able to serve that on a regular basis. It can help automate that and reduce the amount of salespeople that you have to go back after these repeated orders or reorders. You can focus on acquiring new customers instead. And then finally, the growing importance of mobile. As we know, many workforces are increasingly mobile, working remotely, traveling to sales conferences and trade shows. They're on their smartphones and their tablets all the time. You have mobile sales and support employees. Obviously, having a site that's e-commerce capable and mobile capable means you could theoretically have sales, but more importantly, it can be very beneficial on the information sharing side. Imagine if you are a stakeholder and you receive a link in your email on a mobile device that's providing information about a product that your coworker is interested in buying, and you click on that link and it's impossible to read because the site is not mobile friendly. That can be a negative experience that you go through as a stakeholder, which could have an impact on your ability to sell to them. So even just making the content mobile accessible, even though you may not be selling to them online, can be very valuable in terms of helping your ability to reach the stakeholders. It's also important to note that over the past 2 years, and this is for a bit more of a technical dive, but we'll keep it on a very high level, Google's search engine now heavily favors mobile-friendly sites. This first started 2 years ago, and they did a further update about a year ago, which increased the importance of sites that have a mobile-friendly capability. Now, this could be a specific mobile site. This could be your desktop site doing what's called a responsive fit to a mobile device, where it just kind of reshapes everything to fit on your screen. But it's important to consider that even if it's not your primary goal, if you are not mobile friendly, Google will penalize you. And so if part of the way that you're discovered is through a search engine, this could be very hurtful to your business. So it's important to think about that as well. Now, having covered the B2C side of things, let's cover some areas that B2B buyers specifically expect. And some of this we hit on in terms of the importance in the data. Now let's talk about it in a bit more detail in the trends. We have 6 areas here. First, readily discoverable on search engines. Second, easily shareable information. Third is enhanced search. Fourth is a quick order and reorder experience. 5 is that the entire website being able to drive the experience and how all of it comes together. And then the final thing, for certain of you, if you're selling wholesale, is marketplace presence, which is increasingly becoming important. Let's start with readily discoverable on search engines. So as we said in the data, the B2B buying process is more deliberate with research and stakeholders. And since that research is increasingly shifting online, again, an e-commerce site can provide an opportunity to present key information. And again, an e-commerce site can be more than just selling something because it can be an information discovery platform. It also, for those of you who have currently a lockdown e-commerce site, may allow you to avoid having to have an information site separate from an e-commerce site by leveraging access restrictions like Yuri mentioned, where you can display your product details without showing a price and require them to register to see the price. That can protect your pricing from competitors and also allow you to do customized pricing for individual customers once they've registered. But the trick is that you can leverage your e-commerce site to do more information discovery capabilities. Second, we have easily shareable information. So building upon that other bullet is obviously data-rich product pages. It should be in a format that search engines and social can understand. So what that means is, do you have enough text on your page that a search engine understands what the product is? In a bit, when we talk about tools and techniques, is it coded in a way by your platform or developer to make it easy for search engines to read? Do you have downloadable spec sheets and marketing one-pagers that can be easily shared via email, which many times can be more friendly than sending websites in certain cases, especially for those who are sending to stakeholders who tend to need to skim but not read every single detail? And then again, mobile-friendly access anywhere, like that example that I shared with you. Can those of you who are on the road be able to see this information or share it with stakeholders who are on the road? Diving into other specific features that a website can have that can be beneficial, enhanced search is a really big one, and search technology has come a long, long way in 20 years. Those who remember when Google came out and how much of a leap forward it was, and then other technologies that have gotten smarter and smarter to make search a more delightful experience. It's a completely different world than it was in the early days of the internet. Enhanced search can obviously help make finding specific terms easier, but there's now things like fuzzy search. What that means is if someone misspells the name of a brand or what they're trying to search for, you can guide them correctly to the right products anyway. So you get to know what the typos are or what the mistakes are and be able to bring them to the right pages. Being able to auto predict based on a few characters. Those of us who have smartphones like an iPhone or Android, and you're sending a text message, it starts to try to figure out what you're typing and look for patterns there. So the same thing happens with an enhanced search system. So you can better predict what your customers are looking for and make it that much easier to find. And obviously the goal of this is to drive them to the product or category of products that they want much faster, which then speeds up the buying experience and makes it more enjoyable for the customers, and they'll be more likely to complete their transaction. Further speeding up is quick order and reorder. So some of you may have services where there are SKUs that your customers know what they need to order. So quick order will let you enter SKUs or upload a CSV with SKUs and quantities without having to go to each product page one by one. It allows for, if you have the CSV technique for quick order, the customer can save it and upload it again next time, so they have an easy way to start that order again. And then reorder is obviously helpful when purchases are similar or predictable, because you can effectively fill your cart with what you've ordered previously, make any minor edits. Maybe you need to change quantities or add or remove one thing, but instead of building a whole cart from scratch, it really simplifies and speeds up the ordering process. Again, all of this drives a faster purchase. The mantra to think about is B2C customers are more likely to shop. They tend to browse, they look around, think about in your mall, they might do some window shopping or comparison shopping. B2B customers, they've done the research before they get to you, so they want to buy. So how do you make that buying experience as quick as possible, and how do you make sure that they don't encounter any hard or difficult situations that they have to work through along the way? So that really brings us to the overall idea that website drives experience. So what can that do? So now we can take it a little bit further. Yuri mentioned personalization. You can have logins and show customer-specific pricing. Our customers assigned to groups, and with those groups, they see their particular discounts, their particular offers that may differ from a customer who's retail, who's looking at your unlogged-in website and seeing your regular retail price. Can they request quotes? If they're new to you and they're buying in volume, maybe they know that they're eligible for something, but want to get a specific quote from your sales team. So that can be very helpful. Can they complete the purchase, whether paying right up front or buying on net terms with an account that they already have with you? Can they request information? So they may have what's on the product page, but they may want to ask a specific question. So is there that Q&A capability? Or is there an easy way to open up a chat line with your support team, or to submit a question that can be answered very quickly? Or even message boards, forums. They're kind of considered a classic internet experience, but they can be very helpful for certain businesses to encourage a community to form around your products. So for the more passionate of customer bases, you give them a place where they can interact together and share information together. And then, of course, not only access information, but share information, as we've talked about earlier. And then finally, one other area that's important to note as a trend is marketplace presence. Now, most of us know of the B2C classic marketplaces like eBay, Amazon, and Walmart. But what's now starting to happen is there's B2B focused marketplaces. Amazon Prime Business just launched, for instance, which allows for Prime shipping for business customers in a similar way to Prime for B2C customers. And it's a more expensive option, of course, but with the amount of volume that businesses may do, it could be valuable for some businesses. So having your self-represented on there could be helpful. There are obviously B2B transactions that take place in the more standard marketplaces as well. Really, it's about being visible where your customers or potential customers can find you, and making sure that you're not missing out on the opportunity to sell through in channels that could be beneficial to you. So just a summary of the trends that we're gone over here, and we will sort of relate these to techniques you can use in a little bit. First of all, B2B buyers are becoming more savvy. B2C sites are training them to expect more, and that's understandable. B2B buyers also do their homework. They tend to do more research ahead of purchases and work with other stakeholders internally to make a decision. And so buyers and merchants also have B2B specific needs. So specific logic in their websites for handling different customers. We talked about personalization, search, and quotes among the key needs. And then keep in mind that means that if you're looking at off-the-shelf platforms to get started, you might want to make sure that when you're looking at ones that are B2C focused, that you take a bit more of a critical look. Are they actually building all of the B2B specific needs that you need? Or are they going to prove limiting because of the fact that they're really focused on the B2C market and everything's built with that filter in place? There are platforms out there that are B2B focused, thankfully, and make sure that the B2B capabilities are more straightforward and front and center, of which Zoey is one. So that's the idea to keep in mind when you're looking at your choice. there is a trend for B2B businesses to leverage more off-the-shelf solutions, and that's obviously helpful from a cost perspective, but you need to look at both the upfront cost of implementation and how they're going to support you over time, and that means making sure the feature set is supported in a B2B way. So we were going to talk next about our customer success stories. So what we've done is we've brought one of our customers online to talk about his experiences in this area. A lot of what you're going to hear is going to relate to things you've heard in this presentation, so we thought he would be able to really help illustrate some of this. So I'm going to pass it back to Yuri now, and he's going to talk a little bit with Brad and talk about Colorado Standby.
Sure, absolutely. Josh, thank you. And Brad, it's great to have you on the line. Why don't I turn it over to you to just introduce a little bit about Colorado Standby to everyone?
Yeah, thanks for having us. Colorado Standby has been in the e-commerce world since 1999. We started selling just consumer generators, but now pretty much sell everything from really small generators to really big semi-size generators. We started way back when with eCommerce and are now currently using Zoey, and been experiencing a lot of success with Zoey. So just kind of a real brief overview of us.
Terrific. And what are some of the primary goals in having an e-commerce website for Colorado Standby?
I mean, obviously, number one thing is to sell stuff, but having a presence online, being able to quickly get consumers information, get them information any time of the day, and to have a seamless site that just works, it is functional, doesn't have a lot of confusing information, it's just really quick, easy to use.
Yeah, absolutely. And so building up on that, are there any specific things within your current site that you feel help you accomplish those goals, or as migrating over to Zoey helped you improve those?
Yeah, there's a lot of things that Zoey helped us improve with, from just the ease of getting new products on our site to quickly update things, having an online catalog. And when something changes, we can change it right away so customers know. Also gives us the opportunity to put information on our site like installation manuals, quick start guides, things like that. So, someone's out on a Sunday afternoon trying to get their RV generator going or their big commercial generator installed, they have access to all the information they need.
And we were just talking about some of the improvements that you've made to the site either in September or October, and sort of reflected on, the performance of sales for you. Do you want to just go into a little bit of detail around that?
Yeah, I mean, we just, had a situation where folks were in the need of power equipment after storms in Texas, Florida, and Puerto Rico, and other places in the Caribbean. And people needed information about generators quickly, what was available, and we were able to put a category on our site for hurricane relief generators, and direct people to that. So they didn't really have to dig through our site. And then through marketing, we could direct them right to that category so they could have their questions, et cetera, answered quickly at any time of the day.
Absolutely. And have you been able to leverage content marketing at all? I know that you use third-party apps like MailChimp. Have you been able to integrate that? And have you seen, or what kind of results have you seen from doing things like that?
Yeah, we use MailChimp. It's a nice thing that when we get a special, manufacturers will have specials that come up, so we can utilize that, our list of folks, and they're usually specific to like a certain category, maybe they're construction folks or maybe they're oil and gas folks, and we can use MailChimp to direct them to a special on a product that might be of interest to them.
Yeah, one of the things that we're seeing is not only retargeting is extremely important, but also content marketing to your B2B customers. And so it's great to hear that you've got those technologies integrated and leveraged. I'm just curious, for those listening on the line, can you describe what the migration was like to Zoey and sort of getting all of your features up and running and configurations all set?
Yeah, whenever you do something like that, it seems like it can be really daunting, and you almost say, well, let's just stick with what we have. But it was really easy. I mean, to put it bluntly, obviously there was work involved, but the migration process was really quick and pretty seamless. I had to go in and tweak a few things here and there, but not nearly the headache that I envisioned it might be.
Yeah, absolutely. And are you taking advantage today of any of our in-depth catalog pricing, so different pricing for customer groups, or doing any promotions, discounts, or sale prices, or tiered prices, or anything like that? Have you had a chance to explore those?
Yeah, so we're not doing like pricing for individual groups or individual customers, but what we do take advantage of is specials. We'll get, whether it might be an ARA show special or it might be some other special the manufacturer's running, we can advertise that on Zoey. We can put a specific amount of time that special runs for. So we don't have to worry about, hey, the sale's over, go change the price. All that's automated. And it, drives customers to make a purchase, knowing that, this item will be out of special in a week or something like that.
Terrific. And I think, just taking a step back from Zoey in general, one of the questions that most people must be asking to themselves, right, is what made you realize that you needed to move your e-commerce platform, just in general?
Yeah, I mean, just, the trends. I mean, things are changing. They're always changing. But, we needed something that was adaptive, something that kept up with, people like Google, how they would index your site, how they would crawl your site, and stuff like that's constantly changing. If you've got an internal e-commerce site that you're trying to maintain yourself, you're spending a lot of time just keeping up with what's going on instead of doing what what to do, selling generators, selling power equipment. So that was one of the main reasons we wanted to move to a managed solution.
Fantastic. And Brad, as we sort of wrap up with the time that we have allotted today, what are some of the closing thoughts that you have in terms of where you see Colorado stand by heading to the end of the year and next year, especially as it pertains to e-commerce or any e-commerce related tools that you'll be implementing?
Yeah, I mean, I just expect for things continue to improve. More sales coming our way. I think the potential and what we have with our current e-commerce platform with Zoey is well, it's not limitless, but it seems limitless. So it's really refreshing to not have to worry about sitting around. What are we going to do? There's plenty to do and plenty of ways to utilize Zoey.
Terrific. Well, Brad, I want to thank you so much for joining us on the webinar today. Josh, if you've got any questions, of course, feel free to jump in. But otherwise, thank you again. And, it's been a pleasure having you on. I'll turn it back over to Josh.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Brad. And Brad will be online for the Q&A portion as well if you have any questions about his experiences that you'd like to submit. And just as a reminder, for those of you who signed on after we got started, the questions feature of the software is how you would submit them, and we'll address any questions that come up at the end of the presentation. So as we promised, we want to share a bit of techniques and tools that you can use based on the trends and things you can be thinking about that can enhance your site. And many times these tools can be implemented into existing sites, or if you're in the middle of looking for a new platform, these are things you might want to be thinking about. So let's talk about some of them. Let's start with product information. So we've spent a lot of time today talking about the ability to make product information accessible, making sure that your catalog can be found in search engines, and making sure that there's many ways for people to get information. So I have a screenshot here, Ferguson, which is an example of one that I thought was really impressive in terms of the information presentation. You can see that the description and specifications are prominently featured for easy reference and access. access. And one thing that I thought was really interesting that I've seen other sites do, Ferguson in this case didn't, is for those of you who do have a printed catalog, there's even sometimes references to what page this item is on. And that's really cool because if you have a stakeholder that has the catalog in their office, you can basically direct them to the right information without having to send them a link. So it's another way to tie different pieces of your information work together. Another thing that I thought was really impressive in Ferguson's case is that not only do they have the document, you see the red PDF icons on the right side so you can download specifications, parts, and installation, but notice in the upper right corner, that print icon, they've, in this case, actually created a printer-friendly version of the page that can be printed out and handed to someone. I thought that was a really nice touch. So again, for those who tend to have stakeholders that are favorable to the printed materials as opposed to sending a web link, not only can you print out the specification document, for instance, but you could also print out the web page, which is sort of focused in on the information aspect of it. A second way you can work is judiciously restrict info. Now, we've spent a good portion of this presentation talking about the importance of having information being open, but we know that some of you run businesses where you can't expose everything. So this is a more quirky site called Tom Floral where they create different types of crafts. You can see this is chili pepper crafts in this case, but they actually sell them in wholesale amounts to businesses to sell in their retail stores. Now notice that you have to log in to add to cart or see price. So this is how they get the merchants registered and ensure that they're seeing what they should be seeing. So their pricing is protected. They're not giving away what their wholesale pricing is, which may influence the retail sale when people are looking online. But what it does do is allows them to have their catalog present, so the information portion is still available while the pricing and the cart itself and shopping is limited to those who are registered. Now, you take that a step further, and when you have people register, you can put them into a queue where you review them, assign them to a customer group that gets specific pricing, and then you can always change their pricing with their customer groups as they increase their volume. So for those of you who offer pricing based on categories, that's a great way to manage that as well. So obviously with this capability, you also have the option of being able to show a public price, which is your retail price for non-wholesale customers, while allowing registration for wholesale customers to see their wholesale price. And so in your best case scenarios, you can manage one site for both instead of having to maintain two different sites. This also, of course, encourages registration today and helps with marketing tomorrow. So there's a lot of benefits to this type of a technique. It helps you get more people on your list. It helps you have more access to your customers or potential customers' information. It makes them invest a little bit in you, so you invest in them, which can help you grow your business more smartly. We talked about request a quote. There's a few different ways this can be done. This is an example of Baker, and I really liked their approach. So you can see that there's a three-step process for them. You can basically, in this case, because their catalog is somewhat manageable, some of you obviously will have catalogs that can't fit this format, but they can show all of their SKUs and their products in a collapsible list. You can type in the quantity of each, then it moves to request your contact information so they know how to get back to you with the quote, and then you can include a message and submit. Notice that they also have all of their contact information on this page. That's really helpful because if they find this intimidating or they might just want to ask some questions first, they can get to your salespeople. There's always these questions that come up when you talk about empowering people online. You know, what happens to the salespeople? They kind of shift to a different type of role. Instead of looking for the new business on their own, they'll many times be working with people who find you to get sales over the line. So there's still a need to have someone there to help close it. They're just taking on a different part of the process. And so this would be one way that they would do this is if they get the phone call from this page. This also, for those of you with lockdown sites, gives another entry point for those who are outside your gate to be able to get started with you and be able to begin the process of becoming your customer. Again, helps to balance how much information you reveal up front with ensuring that new customers have enough information to be able to get in the door. So thinking about how online research can help, having a strong enough presence that allows people to find you is step one, and then being able to get them to inquire is step two. So request a quote is a phenomenal way to do that. Let's talk about enhanced search for a moment. So we mentioned earlier that it reacts quickly based on customer input. So here's Brad's site, Colorado Standby in action. So we started to type in the word generator, and you can see there are recommendations of both categories and products. And you can see a view all link to see more than the three that it recommends in case customers need to dig a little bit deeper. What it also allows us, aside from the suggestion of products and categories, is if you misspell, so here I misspelled the brand name, I left an M out, but you can still see that it's recommending the brand name generators nonetheless. So again, there's that fuzzy search capability to allow for the typos and misspellings to be course corrected without a negative customer experience. Another thing that I think is sometimes very helpful is filterable search results. So here's another site. This is a corporate site for 1-800-Bakery, which does corporate goods. You can see that I searched for cake and searched and found quite a few results, but notice that there's different categories that I can now filter by, or different delivery requirements or price ranges. So this will actually help me narrow down my results more quickly and get to what I need much faster. So if I'm looking for a certain type of cake, or maybe I'm looking for cake pops, you'll see that'll lower my results down to 10 and make it much quicker to get what I want. And then you can have other types of attributes available. You can have, for instance, if you're selling clothing in bulk, you can do by color or by crew neck versus V-neck. If it's a t-shirt, t-shirts are always an easy example to illustrate. But that allows for a much quicker narrowing down of your catalog. So attributes can be helpful, and that's just attributes usually just tagged information against your products that just make it easier to drill down or to find different things. And then we talked a lot about search engine optimization. So as I promised, we'll get a little bit deeper into that here. Number one thing with any search engine optimized page is to make sure there's enough information to actually read. If there's less than a certain number of words, and people debate the number, but you can, if you have only like a paragraph on your page, it's not going to be enough for Google to find a reliable amount of information to understand what's going on there. So again, looking at Ferguson's page, you can see with all the specifications, there's multiple bullets and descriptions. If you scroll down the page, there's even more information. There's a lot for a search engine like Google to hook into. And that's really important, because then it'll be much more apt to be able to show the right pages at the right time. You also can be negatively impacted by having your pages shown when they're not relevant, and customers will see that, kind of feel down about that, and move on. So that's important. The next thing is that most platforms or tools allow you to set meta tags. This is a screenshot within Zoey's admin of an example of that, where you're basically able to set the title and you're able to set the description that's in the meta tags. So many times that information is then displayed to a searcher. So it's one of the earliest ways to put your best foot forward. So that's, of course, important, because you want to make sure that when people are searching for you, they get enough information to be enticed to click. Then we talked about mobile friendly. And so, of course, having a mobile friendly site will benefit you, A, because mobile searchers will have a better experience, but B, you'll ensure that you won't be penalized by search engines like Google for not having a mobile-friendly website. And they don't need to be the most functional or over-the-top design. Really, the key is just to make sure that they're accessible. Again, many B2B businesses are not trying to sell on mobile, but they want to make sure that they have a mobile presence. E-commerce best practices. So there are things that you can do and work with whoever is your platform or whoever you work with to implement your site, to make sure that they are leveraging the best tools that are available. As you heard Brad say, this is a constantly evolving thing. So we want to make sure that decisions that are made take advantage of that. So for instance, this is a little, there's a website called schema.org, and there's markup that is used for e-commerce in particular, which allows for you under the hood to define what's going on your page. So where is your price located? Where is the name of the product located? Where is the description located? And when the search engine has all those pieces, it can be very beneficial in terms of better reading the page and, again, understanding what's there. That can be good for shopping engine experiences. It can be good for making sure that your products are represented properly when they're displayed in various catalog situations. So that markup is really helpful. Interestingly, less than 10% of e-commerce sites on the internet today use this. That's kind of baffling, because Google gives a very strong positive influence on those that do. So making sure that you select a platform or do an implementation that has that can be very beneficial. And if you have an existing website, it's not that difficult to have it retrofitted to do this. So if you are not doing this today, it's something that you might want to talk about. Canonical tags is another one. The trick with canonical tags is to help move people to the right pages and make sure that search engines aren't ending up with doubles or triples of certain types of information. So if we think about Ferguson, we had that example of a faucet that was on the screen a minute ago. So let's say that the brand is American Standard, and so that's your category, and your subcategory is faucets, and you find the faucet. Well, you could also have a category called faucets, and your subcategory is American Standard. There's the exact same information, but it's a different page. And you don't want Google to find multiple pages with the same information. You will get penalized for that. A canonical tag will say, I want you to use this page as my page for that particular combination. And what that does is ensures that you're going to have one set of information represented in the search engine. You're putting all of your energy into that, and you're ensuring that you're getting the best results. So again, canonical tags is not used by a lot of sites. It should be used by more. If you're not doing that, or you're not sure if you're doing that, it's worth an ask. And then proper header hierarchy. So what that means is that there are different levels of headers that you can use, from the biggest to the smallest, that tell search engines the level of importance on the page. There should always be a H1, which is number one header, once on a page. Then you have 2 through 6, and you can use them more than once, but the relative importance of them determines which ones you should use when. And a search engine will think number one, the one H1 is the most important, so it will pull that information and use that as the most important set of information on that page. For a site like Zoey, we actually put the product name on the product page in that tag. Can't get much more important than that. The name of the product, as you can see here in the Colorado Standby example, has some really important model information, brand information. So clearly that's going to be the most important information for the search engine for that product page. And then the description and other things may have subheaders in it to help emphasize other things. But having proper header hierarchy and making sure that you're not overdoing it or underdoing it will help you with your search engine benefit. And then one other thing for search engine optimization to be thinking about is feed generation. Feeds are basically specially formatted data from your platform that can then submit to shopping platforms like Google Shopping, as well as search engine like the Google Webmaster Tools and Bing Webmaster Tools, which help them understand your pages and what they should be indexing. It's actually true that search engines do not always crawl every page when left to their own devices, because they may not spend enough time on the site or click through all the links on your site. But when you submit a feed, they will over time pick up the pages that they're missing. So this can be helpful to make sure that some of your more deeper pages and products in your catalog aren't missed, things that are on page 3 or versus page 1. Google only goes a certain level of depth in on its own, but if you submit the feeds, they will go further. So this is really helpful in terms of making sure that everything you have is represented in both the search engine itself and the shopping platforms. And then we also talked about faster transactions. So again, a number of ways you can do that is through a quick order form. So here's an example of a quick order form that we had from Roche, which is obviously works in the medical field. You can see that there's the product and quantity capabilities here. And they have also the ability to do that file upload, which allows people to save their template for reuse if they order the same things on a regular basis, which you might in terms of medical supplies. A reorder capability. So one thing that's really beneficial on certain platforms is you have a reorder button on orders that you've previously placed. So as a customer, if you're buying something again, or you basically want a similar order to something you completed in the past, it's a huge time saver because you don't have to worry about going to each of the product pages over and over and grabbing it. And then, of course, through a reorder, it creates the cart, but the cart can still be edited. So if you want to tweak it, you can change your quantities or drop an item, add an item, that sort of thing. More merchants are doing this, but some still aren't. Saving defaults, billing addresses, shipping addresses, and payment options, depending on the scenarios that you offer. Sometimes for B2B reasons, you need to lock down some of these pieces of information, like having a saved billing address to make sure that it's linked to the account. Same thing with shipping. Sometimes with payment options, some of you do offer credit cards, others can't for cost reasons. When you're in wholesale, sometimes the margins are too thin, or maybe you offer ACH and you can allow that to be reused. Even things like mini cart, and this is something that sometimes gets forgotten, but when you have a mini cart, you can go right to checkout without actually having to view your cart, which sometimes sites that require you to go to the cart first, it's just an extra step. And mini cart's sort of a modern way to reduce the number of steps. So as you can see, again, using Colorado Standby as an example, you can use the mini cart to go directly to checkout, or if you want to make some edits, you can go to edit the cart separately, but it also gives a nice snapshot of where you are with your transaction if you're moving around the site and putting things into the cart over time. So having said that, that covers the techniques and tools that we have for recommendations here. Obviously, there's more to it. We didn't want, though, to create something too lengthy. So one of the things we're going to offer, and we're going to send out an email afterwards, is to have a consultation with our team. We can help evaluate your site and look at things that you're doing well, and also make recommendations on things you could be doing, and making recommendations of things you could be checking into. So we'll send out some more information about what that looks like after the presentation. And for those of you signed on late, I also just wanted to note before we enter the Q&A, we're also going to make a recording available of this presentation in full after the presentation in that same email. So that'll be going out relatively quickly after this. So if you want to catch something that you missed or review something again, we're happy to do so. So at this time, we're going to shift into our Q&A format. So just as a reminder, for those of you who are not sure how to submit your questions, there's a questions capability here inside GoToWebinar, which is what we're using today. You can use that feature to submit your questions. We'll go through them in our queue, and we'll talk about them here live. And so feel free to submit any questions you have, no matter how big or small, and as long as we have a little bit of time to cover them, we will. If for some reason we run out of time, we will send out written answers afterwards to help fill in some gaps. So Yuri and Brad, we'll take a look at this here together. Yuri, we'll start with you, and we have a question about any thoughts or trends in the category of showroom functionality and how they can work with e-commerce.
Sure. Sorry, can you hear me? I think I was on mute.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, great. So, you know, I'm not too familiar sort of with or I'm not sure what the quote-unquote showroom means in this case, but I assume that a lot of the topics that we've covered today are going to relate exactly to a showroom-like functionality, which I assume is more of a lookbook or catalog for the website itself versus an actual buying experience end-to-end. So hopefully that's the definition that, you know, the person that submitted the question had for showroom. So assuming so, I think, you know, a lot of what we've discussed today is perfectly in line with that, right? You want to make sure that your information is easy to find. You want to make sure that your search results are responsive to the consumer that's actually browsing the showroom, right? So that they get a personalized experience versus just a generic one. You want to make sure that it's easy to share the information that's been attained, and perhaps even some more in-depth capabilities that we didn't entirely cover today, like generating quotes from the showroom, or just being able to add things to a list to view them later on. But those are some of the thoughts that I have around the showroom functionality in terms of the trends overall. Josh, I'll turn it to you if you've got anything to add.
Sure, I'll definitely throw in some thoughts here. It's definitely something we've been seeing more on the B2C side. It kind of fits into that omni-channel functionality that you see, where you're starting to see some B2C rather, stores putting e-commerce techniques inside their stores, where, for instance, you can try certain things on using the website tech, whether you're in person or online, and things like that. I think it's more specialized with B2B because depending on what you're selling, there may be value there, and sometimes there just may not be. So as with anything with these trends, it's always important to evaluate what your particular business is going to need. Sometimes adopting B2C capabilities may be a negative because they don't really fit in with what your business is trying to accomplish. So definitely keep that in mind when you're thinking about these techniques. Everything is clearly a business-to-business decision when it comes to that, and some things will be more valuable than others. We had a couple of questions relating to the enhanced search. Both were basically identical, and Yuri, I'll let you speak to that as well. And then Brad, I'm going to have a follow-up question on the showroom functionality actually in a second for you, more focused on video content. But let's talk about enhanced search. So Yuri, can you speak a little bit more about the enhanced search that's built into Zoey, and is it something that's separate that you have to buy, or is it integrated natively into the platform?
So the enhanced search, or what we saw in the presentation, is native to Zoey. It comes with all plans. There are some features that you can change around and enable and disable. For example, we saw the filtering on the left-hand side being a single select filter where you pick one and it hides the rest. There are settings in the back end that you can change that. You can choose which attributes are filterable. You can therefore not just search by name, short description, long description, SKU, but you can also, if you added a custom attribute like, let's say, internal SKU or partner SKU or something like that, the search index can also pick that up and then filter the results based on the attributes that you've created and then selected. So there are a few more things that you can do to the search engine itself from what we saw today, but it is all built into Zoey and comes out of the box in terms of signing up for a trial and starting your store. In terms of the next question about the search functionality developed or integrated with a third-party tool, it's a mix of both. We are not a team that is specializing in search and search technologies, so the indexing and the actual search delivery is done by a third party, much like we use a third party for our content distribution and our hosting. You know, we really try to focus the team internally on where the greatest assets are and driving features and functionality forward versus secondary things that, you know, we are not experts in. So it is, you know, a mix of both. It does live within your Zoey store. It comes out of the box. It is developed internally in terms of making sure that all of your data synchronizes, making sure that the catalog actually displays and everything is up and running, but the actual indexing and search relevancy, if you will, of the algorithms behind that are done by a third party.
Perfect. Brad, so I just wanted to kind of circle back because I actually had one hit me that showroom functionality also sometimes includes the ability to do video. And I think you had actually spoken to me recently that you had started to look at video as an opportunity that you weren't able to leverage previously, but you're starting to experiment with. Can you speak to that a bit?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I think a lot of us just go to YouTube. I mean, to look at you know, even if it's how to change a tire or something like that on your car. We've put a lot of videos on our site about the products, you know, from just basic product overviews to installation videos to some videos on our static pages. Like we have an installation page, and we show through a time-lapse video the installation of a big 600 kW diesel generator. Just kind of gives people an idea of what's going on, how things work, et cetera. And I think it's a really helpful solution.
Yeah, it's a really good point. We didn't hit up that in our trends, but that's actually a really good point, is that information comes in so many different forms now. So we have obviously websites, we have catalogs, we have printable documents, but video is an up and coming area for a lot of businesses as well. And it's not just showing, you know, a 360 view of a product, but it's, you know, as you said, it's actually showing how-tos to make sure that they're making good use of the product. And, you know, when you have something like a generator installation, it's really, really important. But there's all sorts of other topics depending on the products being sold in terms of benefits. And, you know, for B2B businesses, it could also be that those videos also help you, especially in wholesale, help support your retail channel by giving them something that they can work with as well when they're selling to their retail customers. So depending on the scenario that you're doing, video can have a multi-purpose benefit as well. So we'll take one more moment to accept any other questions. We're just about out of time, but we do want to take a moment, first of all, to thank Brad at Colorado Standby for joining us today. Really insightful information, and we're really excited to hear about all of your success. And I also wanted to say thank you to Yuri for joining us and sharing your insights as well. As I said, we're going to send out an email to everybody afterwards with the recording of this presentation, as well as some follow-up information on how you can get a consultation with us. So definitely keep an eye out for that. And if any questions come up after this presentation that you'd like us to offer our insights on, you can email me at Josh, Josh, at Zoey, Zoey.com. That's Josh at Zoey.com. And I'll be happy to collect the information and we'll share it out with everybody afterwards as well. On that note, it looks like we're just about out of time. We don't have any further questions, so I just wanted to say thank you. And thank you again to all of our attendees as well as our participants. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and we'll hopefully talk to you very soon.